I'm so fucking excited. I'm smiling on the inside. Man, it's gonna be so fun. I get coaching about this. Oh my god. Oh my god. But first, let's talk about today. Today we have a very awesome day. We're gonna try something completely new, and I can tell you, whether you like it or not, this is here to stay. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, this is something that I think you guys will like as well. So what we are doing today is we are going to be playing LEX versus the best. Yes. Oh. Anyway, so we're going to be playing LEX versus the best, and what does this entail, you ask? What the plan is I'll usually just play like, I don't know, 45 minutes of 50 cent $1 to warm up a bit, and then I'll register 10-20. I have no idea how it's gonna go, like how long the stack will last, you know. So the nice thing about it is that even if we bust, I'm just investing some money in a learning experience, in some content, and kind of throw myself in deep in cash games. So what I'm going to do with that experience is BBC will join us for coaching, and we're gonna rehash everything that we did. We're gonna talk about cash games, and he's gonna show me solves, and he's gonna, we're gonna dive in it together, and we're gonna get better at cash games. I'm going to tie those lessons into doing some sort of bankroll challenge. I want to see and grind up the ladder in cash games. So I'm going to be playing 50 cent $1. And once I have a good win rate over a reasonable sample, I want to move up to 1-2, to 2.5, 5, 5-10, and maybe I'll get to 10-20 eventually, and I can just play those games, right? Oh, there's actually a game. Look at that. These guys are warming up the seats for me. Okay, so I don't know who's good cash game players, but I'll figure it out. Anyway, if I sit down at this table, I can guarantee you right now that the table fills up in no time because I'm not a regular. And people will hunt value, right? And I'm value because I'm not a cash game player. Was I good at cash at one point? Yes. I made my name, I made my fortune, I made everything with cash games, but I haven't played them in 9 years. And it would be a fucking insult to the game and to the people playing it for me to say that I could still beat them. Oh my god, I'm loving this already. These guys, ooh. He's not gonna have a whole lot of 3x in his defending range. Right? Well, he has some suited stuff. What do I have? King 3 suited, Queen 3 suited, Jack 3 suited. That's funny. I want to run it twice. I mean, that's clear, right? Because otherwise this segment might last that much shorter when we're just flipping pre-flop. I'm so fucking excited. I'm smiling on the inside. Man, it's gonna be so fun. I get coaching about this? Oh my god. Oh my god. Run it twice, bottom still clicked? Yeah, of course it is. The fuck, mate. If I say I have one, or if I say I have 2 buy-ins for a full day of playing, you think I'm just gonna flip it away and lose? Like, you think that doesn't create much longevity or anything for streaming, now does it? Interesting. I guess I just have to roll it, no? An 8. Okay, this is nice. Well, I should check my bankroll actually. What was it? Just say it out loud, 6-5. I think I lost like $200. 6-5. I mean, live cash is probably going to be way softer. It also got like a lot about cash games is about like how the rake is structured, right? Seems okay. Overbet the flop. Probably shut down now. It's a bit hard to continue. Okay. Wonder if that's like a sort of like roll scenario for him or something. I don't know. Is it rude to look at the hands or see your opponent's hands? No. Yeah, people consider it rude live. It is rude live. Yeah. Different games. I win enough at Showdown to check. I was playing 25-50 all the time. I played 100-200 live at that time, so. Oh. Oh, hello! Okay, I'm not gonna touch my bet wheels anymore. Unless I need to bet 130%, okay? I don't... Ah! I wonder if he's just gonna bet like 600 here. Yeah, there you go. Good. It's good that I recognize it's an overbet spot. King of Hearts not great. Oh, I like that. He's showing hands. The way you're talking there is definitely not like how he should be getting flag for anything. Maybe this is a squeeze. I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe I want to squeeze suited hands here. Do you work on many exploits deviations in your coaching? 0. Jordan, actually, I made a... Yeah, I probably should check his flop. I don't know. I mean, I can't look at hands and decide that is the thing to do, right? Oh, that's nice. Okay. We're gonna bet pot. I think we range bet this card. Nice. Anything I've done in cash in my life, guys, is useless. That's how much the game changed. I've played 8 million hands of No Limit Hold'em. Let's say 7 million hands of No Limit Hold'em on PokerStars in the past. I think all of those are useless. Because they were 9 years ago and earlier. I really hope that I'm not just gonna... Because I'm gonna lose a lot in these segments. I'm gonna lose a lot in these segments, and... I really hope it's not... If I just don't lose it that quickly... I want it so bad. I can't touch my buttons, can I? I wanted to bet 50% so bad. All right. Because I do think I want to know the sliver of raising nines or not, but I see a lot of people flatting pocket pairs. But it's also like if it's at a pip, let's say it's at 15% or 20%. I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of dissect defending, right? In the cash in tournaments, you're always like wary of what does the big blinds have in terms of dissects. Now, the one thing I'm a bit concerned about here would be the fact that I'm capped in terms of pairs if I could get check raised there, but maybe his flat protects me, right? From him exercising that advantage. I have no idea what to do. Coach in one form or another. I don't know. A gap there, and now what I can do now is just like play super efficient and then do the BBC coaching at 3. That's a good card, I think. Because I'll call a lot with ace-x hands with a low kicker now. Yeah, you see, that's a good card. Well, I don't know. Amazing river. I blocked Jack 10 of diamonds, which is great. So, in my opinion, there's not Jack 10 combinations left. Oh my god, that sucks. I hit the river, but you know, I got excited, obviously. First check. Can I make better ace high folds here? Is that a thing? I think so. I mean, I deny equity from his king highs and stuff. Just doing off the table work on the other days. From now on. Here we go. Exciting. I think this is our first pre-flop all-in, actually. What a way to go. That's unfortunate. Man, that's crazy. That's like 2 minutes before I said I think I wanna play 50 cents $1 soon. So now, yeah, now we're 4K down. So I'll just play to my big blinds and that's it.
Yo, what's going on?
Yo, what up? What up? How you doing?
I'm doing well, bro. How are you?
I've been consuming sort of like knowledge that I'm not really used to consuming all day, and it's so crazy how much quicker it burns you out than just playing tournaments.
Sure.
Were you able to load the hands okay?
Yeah, I got them. We're good.
Nice. I'm really excited. Oh, look at that. I remember that one.
Were you opening this hand all the time, some of the time, mixing? What are you doing?
I'm pure opening this. I mean, I'm assuming that everything's gonna be a little bit more loose once you get on higher stakes.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's close. It's close. As Jack 3 suited is like a very low weighted mix, and so like it's not a bad open or anything. It's just like it's close. So what kind of a c-bet strategy are you adopting here?
I'm actually I've been heavily c-betting because ranges are a little bit. I don't know. My first instinct has just been to c-bet a lot. So I think that with a hand like this, my idea is kind of like I'm making my opponents realize equity. It's a hand that plays garbage on future streets, but I have auto folds, so small bet to sort of like have an advantage around all of those.
The first thing is, and like I like the nice thing about me coaching you is that like I've done the same kind of journey where I started with sit and goes, then MTTs a lot, and then especially studying it, and then kind of went to cash games last. So the types of mistakes that we make are going to be similar. So one of the main mistakes that MTT players make when they play cash games is they basically overplay their ranges. And the reason that they overplay their ranges is because that's the way you're supposed to play in tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
So in tournaments, when you open the hand, when you open the pot, you basically have a pretty substantial range advantage against almost any caller. Like now that's not exactly true if you get called by like you open under the gun and under the gun +1 calls. That's not going to be true. But if you open from the button and the big blind calls, or even if you open from like the button or the cutoff or MP, and even like if the small blind calls, you're going to have a situation where they have these like relatively wide flatting ranges because the flats are unraked, and because there's an ante, and because you're probably min raising. So like that combination of factors is not just one of them, but that combination of factors produces pretty weak defending strategies versus your raise.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not true, and none of those things are true in cash. So in cash games, you're not min raising, you 2.5x. In cash games, there's no ante, and in cash games, they get raked to play each hand. So the range disparity between the opener and the caller is much more narrow.
Mm.
So it's true that he didn't 3-bet. So you do have advantages. I'm not saying that you don't have advantages. You do. But they don't really manifest themselves in the same way that, and they're not as substantial as they would be in tournaments, for example. I'm just going to take a quick look here. So if you take a look at the bottom of the big blind's defending range, it's offsuit 9s. I mean, yeah, he's got some offsuit 8s in there that mix, but the bottom, the weakest hands the big blind is going to call are primarily offsuit 9s. If you go to the bottom of the button's opening range, it's going to be kind of disappointing. It's offsuit 9s with some offsuit 8s that mix. So the big blind can't really call, with too much weaker of a range. And so you end up in a situation where for the most part on flops, you unfortunately have to mix. So, and that's also going to be true for the most part when you 3-bet as well. So a lot of the situations that you're used to as a tournament player, where you're used to, okay, I raise the button, big blind calls, I'm going to use a heavy c-bet strategy. Okay, button raises, I 3-bet the big blind, button calls, I'm going to use a heavy c-bet strategy.
Yeah.
That's not really great. This is like, kind of a classic hand to check if we're going to use, like if I told you that this was like a 50-50 bet check situation, this is not an unreasonable hand to check. Like if I tell you, right, like if, just like if you have like top pair, no kicker, right? If you have queen deuce or queen 4, if I tell you going in, okay, this is a 50-50 bet check situation, you're probably going to bet a lot of, king queen, maybe you bet a lot of ace queen,
Yeah.
but you're probably going to check a lot of like queen deuce, queen 4, queen 5. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at the solution here, we immediately start off with like 50-50 bet check. Roughly speaking, it's 46% check. So it's a lot of check. So within that strategy, we have high frequency check with the under pairs to the 7, 6s, 5s, and 4s. Under pairs to the queen, jacks, 10s. This is the same deployment of a strategy that you would see in tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Like the execution's similar. Pocket kings is a really high frequency bet. Pocket aces is the one that checks. And then here's our jack 3 suited, which with diamonds specifically, so jack 3 suited with no backdoor flush draw, is very, very, very high frequency check. And yeah, I mean, like I said, if in the context of a 50-50 bet check strat, like none of this is like crazy, but when you look at it, it's like, oh shit, like this, I can't just bet range.
Yeah.
Which is one of the main differentiating characteristics about this compared to MTTs. The main reason we bet range is like, actually, let's just take a quick look at the big blind's range again, the suited combos even. The big blind can't even defend 100% of suited combos against the button.
Yeah.
So if the big blind can't defend 100% of suited combos, that's just an automatic big difference between this format and MTTs. Because in MTTs, we never fold suited hands against any position, pretty much. And there's also the other sharp difference between cash game and MTT post flop strategy is just the primacy of betting small. And so we can look at, this is the c-bet strategy on all boards, ace through ace high and below. And here we're seeing, 25, this is 25% plus bet half pot or bigger. So this is 25% plus bet half pot or bigger. You can see that on ace high boards, it's very competitive with betting small.
Yeah.
So there's no primacy of the bet small size here. Here, if we can contrast the frequency, we're still at about 25%. No primacy of the bet small size. Here, 18, 25% against 33. It's close. Here, definitely primacy of betting large, actually. So here, betting large is a little bit higher frequency than betting small. Here, betting large is higher frequency than betting small. Here, betting large is higher frequency than betting small. Here, betting large is higher frequency than betting small. Here, higher, and so you start to get the point. I'm not going to just ramble on for ages,
Yeah.
but saying the same thing, but you get the idea. Betting large is extraordinarily competitive with small betting across basically all flop types. And you can see across all flop types that we have to check about half the time. There is no like, oh, like it's an ace high flop, I'll just bet range. Like, oh, it's a jack high flop, I'll just bet range. Like, no, it's like you don't get to bet range much.
Okay.
So can't be, you can't really be betting range. You can't really just be betting small sizings. You have to use big sizings. It's very important, I think, also for some of your value bets to be using big sizings because it's otherwise difficult to get 100 BBs in with like the strongest parts of your range if you're always betting really small. So so like it's just like I kind of wanted to cover some of the fundamental differences because this is like, even though it's just one hand, we're just betting small. It's really not that big of a deal. It's not that bad, but it just kind of suggested to me that like we're probably deploying the wrong strat.
Yeah.
And then you said like, hey, I'm c betting a lot, and I'm like, all right, fuck, like, we gotta see if we can do something. So all right, so this is cool. It's good. Just make sure you're raising weak enough. Blast at it. That seems it's interesting. Okay, we've got an aggressive 2-bet. The 3x component is pure 2-bet. So like you nailed that. That's great. I mentioned like just make sure that you've got a weak enough range. So like here's king 10 off.
King 10 off.
Here's king 9 off. Yeah. So like you've got to just have a weak enough range. As long as you have a weak enough range, like I'm totally good with it. On the value side, we have kings at a pure weight. We have like some mixed in queen X, particularly with clubs. We went to a sizing choice that's I think on the bigger side.
Yeah, 12.5 or whatever.
Yeah, so you got closer to 14, which is good. That's what is correct. Your opponent plays mostly call fold. They do have a 3-bet. It's modest.
I was just like, I wasn't really sure on the river in terms of, I thought that in terms of sizing, I thought it was really important to see who has the advantage, right? Because if I have like the most clear advantage ever, then I feel like I can just like pile on it. And that's where I kind of, obviously I know that people should defend less, like they're going to have less suited 3x, and especially like off-suited 3x is just like fucking gone, right? So, I mean, if they're really missing like Jack 3, 9 3, 10 3, 8 3, all of those suited hands, and I should probably be able to just put in like 40 big blinds.
I mean, like for me the question, like the debate was more like between jamming and betting like this.
Jamming.
You're going to see like a huge yeah. I don't think you're going to see a huge EV difference between. I mean, there's a straight that's possible. It's it's 6-4 suited, but there's not like
it's one combo, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like a bunch of stuff we lose to, right? So I mean, like when you have the nuts, you're going to see a bunch of jamming. That's the other thing. If you're the in position player, as the in position player, when you have nut asymmetry, like you're going to see jamming. So for me, like it was this sizing or like should I jam? I didn't really know the answer. And so we can look at the solution, and they don't actually have like overbetting between 85%, which is like similar to your answer. Yeah. They don't really have anything between this and jamming. But with hands like this one, jamming is reasonable, and what you did is reasonable. I mean, like it's the higher frequency option of the two. But jamming is also like something to consider, and I didn't know which one to pick, and it turns out that both were good. I didn't know. I had no clue. If, like, should I jam here? It feels close, and it's like, yeah, you can do both. It's like you can jam and you can not jam.
It's just like, if
we jam,
it's just
if we jam.
we're either gonna bet 80% or all in. I was just like, what? Just what? I was just thinking about my like 130% or something. It's just like, oh god, awful. It's way too small.
Sure. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And yeah, like that's one of the things that also takes some getting used to. Although this is also good in tournaments. Like you could simplify your strategy in tournaments in some spots to just like slamming it here or like betting, like kind of like what you did. But you can see that you're still forcing with a jam, which is quite large. With a jam, you're still forcing VPIP from like queen deuce at a mix, like queen deuce, queen 4, queen 5, queen 6. Like your opponent can't just call with trips or a straight. Because that's just like his range is too weak for that. He can't call like that. So like this is his straight weighting. You know what I mean? Like like whatever. And when we have trips, like he doesn't have that many trips combos. Now obviously we have to offset our value bets with bluffs, and so it's important that even when we don't have trips, that they don't have trips too often. Otherwise, we couldn't bluff like with the jam. But I mean, like their defending range is suited trips. They don't have offsuit trips. So the defending range is suited trips. It's 2 combos apiece if we don't have the blocker, and then like this weight on a straight. And it's just like, all right, like that's not, their nut ratio is really not that high. And so like they have to, they're going to have to defend with some hero calls. You can see like 7-6, you can see 7-5, you can see 7-4.
Man, look at fucking A7.
A7, like yeah, they have to, like there's going to be some money that gets like
Oh my
dumped in
god.
here. Gets dumped in here. And that's if we jammed, right?
You know what's immediately awesome is like this is I mean I've dabbled a little bit in Zoom cash games over the last couple months, but this is my first time really thinking about, what are we gonna do, etc. And the first hand we get coaching, and there's immediately things that make me think this is gonna be fucking amazing. If you can 2.5x spot shove there, like how fucking incredible is that?
Yeah, it's fun too. It makes the game way more fun. Okay. So the other thing is I'm just going in order by the time you play them. So
yeah. Oh, this I really can't wait to hear what you have to say about this one.
So now, what do you think? So what do you like? Give me some of your thoughts. Like I've given you kind of my spiel about like how where I think you're making mistakes and like what I think is going to be difficult for you. And now you have my perspective a little bit. What do you think about this hand?
Knowing now what you said about c-betting and defending ranges and ranges being like very competitive with each other, I probably think that this hand checks a lot, just because of its durability, showdown value, durability. I'm not actually giving that much free equity up because the ranges are a bit more snug. I really like the club component. So I would have leaned more towards checking, knowing what I know now.
Good. So I mean, like that's kind of like that's like the coaching is taking effect. So I'm glad to hear that. Now it doesn't mean that it's a check. It just means that like maybe we're gonna think about things a little bit differently than before, which is what the point is. So okay, so first things first, let's just take a quick look at the hand, and then we're gonna look at some groupings. So the first thing is here's your bet small answer. It basically sucks. I mean, like there's no primacy of bet small whatsoever. You've got like here's bet 75%, here's bet 50%, and that's mostly what you do. You're mostly betting half pot plus. And then here's your bet 1/3 option, which is like, it's not like never happening, but it's not like a high frequency type of strat that we want to deploy either. And we're at like, what are we at? 55% bet, 45% check, right? So you've got to get used to the idea that like I'm going to have to 50-50 bet check a lot of these spots. Okay, so within a lower frequency c-bet strategy, how do we navigate? So same kind of idea. The overpairs that get the most protection from betting, they bet the most. So tens bets the most, then jacks, then queens, then kings, then aces. Sets in these types of situations are going to be great ways to check. So hands like pocket nines is a great way to check. Doesn't really need much protection. 9x great kicker. That's a high value, high protection type of hand. It bets. Ace 9 is a great bet. King 9 is a great bet. Queen 9 is a great bet. Again, we see these same ideas play out in tournaments. So here's all 3-bet pots. And so we can kind of like cluster this with like bet large versus bet small. And so on ace high flops, you do see on ace high flops betting small is quite competitive, but you still have to check a lot. This is again small blind 3-bet. So versus button.
Wow.
And so we've got this like, there's not that much bet large on these ace high flops, but there's a lot of check relative to what you're used to, for sure.
Yeah.
King high flops, again, you have a lot of this bet small. Although on king high flops, you also have like 32 or 33% bet large, and you don't have much check. So, ace high flops, lots of check. King high flops, not so much check. Queen high boards, very tight, starting to get tighter between bet small and bet large. Still lots of check. Jack high flops. And so as we move down the boards, protection is increasing in merit. Like the idea of betting for protection is more relevant on a 10 high flop than on an ace high flop. I think it's pretty obvious to most people. Like the lower the board, the more protection you get when you bet it. Yeah. So like the betting large gets more competitive. That's the way that I understand it. The way that I understand it is that the lower the board texture, like the more competitive the protection bet component is when you have jacks on a 9 high flop as opposed to having like kings on a queen high flop. Right? Like when you have an overpair on a 9 high flop, betting for protection has merit. When you have an overpair on a king high flop, you have pocket aces. Betting for protection doesn't have any merit at all. So we go down to like 10 high flops, and we see that like betting large is quite competitive. Go to 9 high flops, betting large is quite competitive. Jack high flops, 8 high flops, etc. So like as soon as you get past like ace, king, queen high flops, betting large is very competitive with betting small. And on ace, king, and queen high flops, with the exception of king high flops, on ace and queen high flops, checking is very competitive with betting. So those are the two ways that like I try to keep things straight and try to organize the information.
All right,
And so this
that
is just like
sucks.
so yeah. So like we mostly want to either check or bet large, and with your actual hand, um, there's a decent amount of betting large, and there's a decent amount of checking. And so like it's not it's a simplification I think is not super difficult to get. So we bet small, it's okay. We get called, okay. It's not the greatest turn. We're gonna check, presumably. I don't know what we did. That's good. I think that's gonna be good anyways. I haven't checked the answer, but I would assume that's great. I'm probably gonna call. I'm never gonna fold, and I don't know if I want to raise with this hand. We do have a lot of hands that are probably better for raising than this. Wouldn't surprise me if there's like a 15% raise or so, like with something like this, but probably gonna call a lot. And it's kind of an interesting bet size.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just call still, but I would be thinking about jamming against this bet size, but I'd probably just call still.
I
Ooh.
randomized it
Okay. So thoughts behind randomizing it? What was the?
because I kind of figured I really didn't think that he would. I mean, from the fact that you're saying like I could raise it, just means that he's gonna value bet like lower clubs a lot, right? Which is something.
Interesting bet size. It's an interesting bet size that he's chosen. I mean, like you definitely have the ace of clubs in your range still. So I mean, I suppose that's probably why. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, so in my head I was thinking like he probably doesn't value bet because if he bets this size, that means that he's not betting that polarized or anything. So it probably means that he's value betting clubs a lot, and that's why you might want to consider raising the club. But I just didn't think that he would bet the 7 of clubs here or something, right?
Oh, he's not. That's too far down.
Okay, so we're just considering like the jack of clubs, the 10 of clubs, and then the ace and the king of clubs, right? So.
Oh yeah, I don't even know if the 10 of clubs is going to reopen really.
Well,
But I do think that like to this sizing choice, like it's like. So the question for me was like, is he jamming? Is he jamming the ace of clubs? Like, is he mixed weight jamming the ace of clubs? Is he pure jamming the ace of clubs? How does the ace of clubs play? Because and the reason that's important is because like if the ace of clubs doesn't do this, and it's not unreasonable to do this with the ace of clubs, but if the ace of clubs doesn't do this, then his range becomes like in a kind of like piss poor case scenario. Like
yeah,
king, queen, jack of clubs, like,
I see what you're saying.
almost at like a minimum. And then like maybe it's like king, queen, jack, 10 of clubs. But I don't know. I think like I would call. I mean, like I'd be like, can I jam here? I'd be like, I have the ace of clubs too much. I'm not jamming here. And then I would call. Because you have the ace of clubs so much, it becomes more reasonable for him maybe to use smaller bet sizes. But I do think for sure that he has the queen of clubs a lot. So when we randomize, which is what you did, right? So when we use a randomizer, one of the things is to like think about your hand. So you have a bluff catcher. So if you have a bluff catcher, you can use a randomizer. You can just like, without thinking about blocking effects. Before we think about blocking effects, if all of our bluff catchers are identical, then our fold percentage is easy to calculate. It's just 42 divided by 100, which is roughly speaking, 42 divided by 98, which is roughly 42 over 100, which is 42%.
Yeah.
So we're going to 42%, fold with our range, and then 58% defend with our range, and then it's 58% defend minus automatic defends, which would be like ace high clubs here, for example. And then you have 58% minus the nuts, and then you have like whatever. Let's just call it 55%, or let's just call it 50%. Let's make the math easy. So you have 50% defend with all of the hands that are just like bluff catchers, let's say. And so then they just mix. But the issue with that is that you do have blocking effects, and there are better bluff catchers than others. And if your opponent can have the queen of clubs, which I think it's very difficult to say that he can't have the queen of clubs when he chooses this size. If your opponent can have the queen of clubs, then of course when you have the queen of clubs, you reduce the frequency that your opponent's value betting dramatically because he can only have the king of clubs or the ace of clubs. And so this bluff catcher smashes the like 7 of clubs or the 6 of clubs or the 4 of clubs.
I see.
So this bluff catcher is going to rank way ahead of those.
Yeah. So
even if you think that this is maybe kind of sort of like a random like a bluff catcher, this particular bluff catcher is probably too good to fold. So
that's such a good point. Yeah, because in my head I was just thinking like, okay, because in my head I thought the same as you. I especially in a 3-bet pot, I didn't think that the 10 of clubs was going to be super bet happy. So in my head I was like, okay, I lose to ace or king of clubs. I win against the jack of clubs. Didn't consider the queen of clubs, which is very important, like you mentioned. But so then I thought, I have a bluff catcher, but I thought way too singularly in the hand. But if I think about like, okay, I need to call with approximately 50% of my range, that beats bluffs. This hand is so far high up in that range that this might not even be the one where I randomize, right? Is that also correct
Yeah.
in saying where like
Yeah, that's reasonable.
yeah, because I still need the top of that range that beats bluff. Still, just it's still easier if that pure calls, right?
Yep.
Because then otherwise you might have the king of clubs here, and you might say like, well, I'm gonna roll. If I roll 80 or lower, I call. But then like, why the fuck would you fold at 20%? There's gonna be pure calls in there, no matter if it's a bluff catcher.
Correct. Yeah. Like
Fuck.
you have to organize basically, you want to try to organize the bluff catchers and the super premium bluff catchers. And you could say they're super premium because of hand strength, or you could say they're super premium because of blocking effects, or both. And unfortunately, this hand has kind of both. I mean, this is a queen high flush and it blocks queen high flushes, right? So this is kind of, it hits you on both fronts. I haven't actually looked at the solution, so we'll see. So we'll see what the answer is. So on the turn here, you had ace queen. I mentioned checking. You checked, so we both got the answer right here. So this is no brownie points for either one of us. Our opponent bets, I think 1/3. Okay, whatever. Whatever that mathematically works out to be. He bets small, and like that's great. He's supposed to bet small, and so this is so for you, right? You as the imposition player here, it's bet small or check. So opponent nails it. This hand, you need the ace of clubs to raise. But then king, queen, king of clubs mixes to raise. Like I didn't know like exactly. Again, I'm not a cash game pro, so I don't know this stuff exactly. But king, queen offsuit, king of clubs does mix to raise, and so like it's kind of close-ish. Like I feel like that's kind of close. Here is ace jack offsuit, which does mix to raise. So I said like ace queen. I'm like, am I supposed to raise here? I don't know. It seems kind of close, maybe. Ace queen is pure call, but ace jack is mixing to raise. King queen is mixing to raise. So like I wasn't way off. Ace 10 is mixing to raise. Again, 10 of clubs is the most interesting variation there. Jack of clubs also the most interesting variation there. So I was like, again, ace queen doesn't mix to raise, but the jack and ace jack and ace 10 and king queen do. So like I don't feel too bad about that part. We call. So there's some leading. I'm not like mind blown by the fact that there's leading. We do have the ace of clubs quite a bit, so I'm not like shocked that there's a little bit of lead. It's to a small size. We check. Our opponent's supposed to jam, and that's kind of what I thought. I mean, like when he didn't jam, I was like, why didn't you jam? So I mean, like, and then I tried to be like, okay, well, this guy plays. This is 10-20. Maybe he's better than me. And so like I was like, maybe he thinks his opponent has the ace of clubs way too often, and that's why he didn't jam. And I'm like, man, it feels like he's got like thinner value bets if he's not jamming though, because like it seems kind of obvious to me to jam. Like I'm not a 10-20 cash game, right? I don't play 10-20 cash. I don't play cash that often, but I don't study it that often either. I'm focused on tournaments with the stable and everything else, but it still felt like fairly intuitive that he should just be jamming. If we isolate this, you don't see the ace of clubs much. I mean, you see suited. You just don't see like the ace of clubs much. I mean, like this is like king of clubs, queen. Like you see suited flushes, and the reason you'll see suited flushes is because the suited flushes block where their value is coming from.
Yeah.
So if you have king, queen of clubs, you can't get called by the queen high flushes. If you have queen, jack of clubs, you can't get called by the jack high flushes. If you have jack 10 of clubs, you can't get called by the 10 high flushes. So it's not a surprise. It's not coincidence that you see like the smaller size being suited as opposed to being like offsuit. So like that makes sense to me.
Okay.
But he bets 41%. He bets this size that he's not supposed to bet.
Oh, look at that. Ace queen off, pure jams now.
And yeah, so we check. He bets not all in. He's supposed to jam. And when we have the ace queen here, we just call Lex. So we don't have the ace of clubs. Or sorry, we don't have the queen of clubs here when we get to this point in the hand.
Okay.
So when we get to this point in the hand,
okay, it's not a jam. Okay.
If we have the queen of clubs, it's just a call. Yeah.
Okay.
If we have the king of clubs, it's a jam here. So ace, king of clubs is mixing between jam and call.
Which highlights what your point earlier, how important it is to have the queen of clubs. If you look at that, the queen of clubs pure calls and then the king of clubs pure jams. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it matters. Like the queen of clubs is a relevant blocker for sure. Ace jack is still a call. So like we don't have a weighting on it, but you can just see what the behavior. So you can see that ace jack is between call, fold, and all in. It's just pure call with the jack of clubs. Over here we have sevens with the 7 of clubs. Mixing to jam, which is I would never have done personally. I'm just not good enough. But 7 of clubs is mixing to jam, and the rest of the time it calls. 8s and 9s don't have can't be flushes, so it's not as interesting. These are going to be ace high flushes, so they're not super interesting. We can look at some pairs over here. Don't have club here. Don't have a club here. Don't have a club here. Go back here. Let's go back here. So we end up leading with like the ace, queen, queen of clubs, which is pretty cool. We end up leading with a lot of our king, queen, queen of clubs as well. So a lot of these like queen of clubs, that's where they're getting kind of pulled out. But yeah, they got pulled out elsewhere as well. They just barreled or something. But
Yeah.
queen of clubs is betting smalls again. My donk bet out of position strat's not the greatest, so you guys are going to see that is kind of like a predictable error on my part. When I'm supposed to donk bet after check calling the turn, I'm gonna fuck that up quite a bit. So, and yeah, so we check. He's supposed to jam. Like I said, this like non all in jam is like very weird. But I don't see any reason to suggest that anything that suggests that like your hand is a fold. You can see like pocket nines, which is just a set, is pure call. Pocket eights is a pure call as well. Yeah. So, but the fold percentage is in line with what we were expecting as well.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
it's all just a trip of getting better, bro. It doesn't matter. It's all good. You're playing fine. You'll get there. All right. So we cut off opens. We 3-bet. Thoughts here? Was this purely weighted for you? Is this like something you're mixing? Like,
I think I mixed king nine. Let's say 25%.
So it looks like this. I'm just staying in one program because for me it's easier. Speed's an issue. So we've got king nine of clubs here. It's mixing between call and 3-bet. 64% 3-bet. This is also against a 2.3x though. Let me just check the BBC charts. Yeah, I mean 50-50. Looks like 50-50 against 2.5x here. Okay, so I do think that these situations lend themselves a little bit more to small betting. So small betting is going to be more competitive here. However, big betting is still going to be a thing. So I think your sizing choice was like a little bit stronger of an answer. Although I do think that there's going to be some large betting. But you can see here like we're betting range. So like this is more like, you know, like when I looked at this one, I was like, oh, this one looks more reasonable. Like I wasn't trying to be a critic of this one necessarily. So there is some betting large. So that's the first one. There's still betting large. However, check has been kind of demolished, and bet small is like back in vogue. Like this is like kind of more like a tournament. Like this is kind of more like what you're used to seeing. So we bet small. I think that's a reasonable answer. Thoughts here?
I think that, I mean, it's nice to have flush draw, etc. But I block some of his, calling range. I think that it becomes more dense around pairs. As soon as he calls, obviously, less likelihood that I have a jack. So I think that our checking percentage is going to go up on this turn in general. And I think this hand like blocks. You know, it's also not great to block like king queen off with the king of clubs. It's going to float the flop. So I think that he has less misses and easier or more equity in general after calling. Figured I'm gonna heavily check, or the spade is good for us to bet. That's one thing that I would say is good to bet, that it's not a heart or so a spade or a diamond would be
When
good.
When you say that, why do you say that?
Because his backdoor hearts miss.
It's also nice that you block with these two suits of Jack X here. You block the trips variations. So you block Jack nine of clubs. You block King Jack of clubs. So I didn't know why you were picking on the suits. But like if it was for example, if it's a Jack of clubs in this exact instance, you have a flush. So that wouldn't be like the worst thing in the world. But what does happen is like you want to think about, because the ranges are tighter, the suited fractions of someone's range become more relevant. Because the suited fractions of someone's range become more relevant, thinking about how to block the strongest parts of their range, in particular like trips, is important. And so I just want to see, like, kind of hear like how you were thinking about that, and kind of, yeah, that's all. So I think this is going to be like a decent hand to bet, first of all. So I have no idea. I've been struggling with this program for the past few minutes, but I do think your hand's going to be like decent hand to bet. So 60% bet, 40% check. Decent hand to bet. You're probably surprised by the bet percentage, if I had to guess. Like the bet percentage with your range. It's 60-40. So like it's not a great card, but it's not probably like the type of slowdown that you would have expected. You're still betting, and you still actually bet quite big as well. You're not like, ooh, like he could have trips. Like let me just like shy away and bet really small. It's like, no, you can just like hammer him still and bet 75%. So queens, kings, aces, pretty high frequency bets. Like yeah, sure. In my opinion, I would probably check aces the most. So you can see that it's like actually kings the most, but in my head, the way I organize the information, I'd probably have a higher frequency check on aces. I think that's fine. Queens is pure bet. I would basically pure bet queens. And that's for protection reasons relative to the other pairs. Your opponent's supposed to 4-bet a lot with these hands. so they don't have that much of it. They're also supposed to check raise some weighting on these hands on the flop. It's probably a robust weighting. If we go back, yeah, they just don't have them. They forward them pure, so you don't even have to think about it. And let's go back here. Like, why did I say that though? Like, you can see like ace jack, for example, pretty decent check raise on the flop from your opponent with even a hand like ace jack. So even if they did flat queens or kings, or, like they should probably check raise the flop. So you really don't have to worry about those hands. So like queens is just the same as kings and aces. They get value from the same region. They lose to the same region, but queens gets more protection. So you pure bet queens. Aces needs the least protection. Also blocks ace high float. So I'd probably check that more. But again, there's less tension between, or there's a lot of tension between like aces and kings, and they're both very comparable. So we've got let's see how your flush draws behave. Let's go to filters here. So this is the flush draw component. You can see how aggressively your flush draws bet. So, like one of the things that when I looked at the spot, I was like, I felt like I could bet. And so, like, yeah, flush draws are very aggressive bets here. We don't really have straight draws, so there's really nothing to look at on that front. You can see trips is a very aggressive bet. Full house is a very aggressive bet. Quads, if you had it, would be checked. Under pairs, not great bets. Over pairs, pretty aggressive bets. So anyways, you get the idea of how this works. We don't have anything, so you should fold.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey. So this one was easy. We got this one. We got this one down.
Ooh, yeah. Next, yeah. Okay, look at me. Boom.
Coming after it. It's pretty sweet. So I actually don't think this is bad. So I think this is okay.
No, I mean, I actually don't think it's bad either. I think it's fucking awesome.
And then we check the turn, which I think is reasonable.
I wasn't sure. Like here, I just thought like there's quite some turn checks that I have. I still have a range advantage on his boards. His sort of like, cards with a single heart in it, miss the flushes because that's versus an overbet on the flop. That's kind of what he looks to defend, right? Hands with a single heart in it. I just thought in my head like, well, I don't know. Maybe this is like super noob or something that I thought, well, this is how I could play ace queen. I don't know.
I mean, you just overbet the flop, bro. Like, there's nothing super noob going on about this hand. Super noobs don't overbet flops. So this looks pretty solid. Big blind checks range. I mean, obviously, and then like we do have an overbet strat. That's pretty meaningful. I mean, it's like the most commonly chosen bet size is overbet.
Good.
6-5 suited, like with spades, like it's totally fine. Like you're well within your rights to just like be like, let's press the fuck you button and start smashing. Like you're doing a good job with this one. So it's off to the races at the beginning. As far as where the value is coming from for this sizing choice, which is an important question to answer. We do have sevens. We have some jacks. We have some ace jack. This is to some extent in contrast with like at least shorter stack MTTs, where in shorter stack MTTs situations, you have a value protection bias, so the sets don't do this quite as often. Like the strongest hands don't do this quite as often. But in cash games, like you're so deep that if you want to get stacks in with like a prayer in single raise pot, this is going to be like an important part of how that you actually accomplish that goal. So we can overbet. We did, which is what we did. We played that street's great. I have no idea. I'm not like particularly, this is not like a really high frequency studied spot for me. Like overbet flop, king of hearts turn. I think the turn check was reasonable. I actually think barreling's somewhat reasonable, but I do like checking. I prefer to bet with stronger hands for the most part. So the small blind, the big blind rather, is supposed to lead the turn with like most of the range. 20% check, 80% lead here.
That's insane.
That's so cool. You see it you see a lot of it when like the second when there's two of these high card hearts here, it's very difficult for the opener to have a flush, right? Like this particular king of hearts, like this you see the same behavior in tournaments. So this is kind of one of those things where, you see the same type of behavior in tournaments because the opening range is really going to have a difficult time having flushes. Of course, the big blind's got all those suited hands that they call with. The big blind calls with less suited hands in this format than in tournaments, but they still have they still have all these ones down here. Like we don't open any of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we have all these ways to make flushes, and the big blind the opener just doesn't. So this like kind of board texture where the primary way for the opener to have flushes have been subtracted, you do end up seeing leading. So this is not like crazy. So this happens, like I said, in tournaments. Anyways, other guy checks, and
good.
We have 6-5, and we're supposed to just bet for the most part with like a stronger range. So this hand mostly checks. The bet size is pretty small, which is actually pretty cool. I didn't know what the bet size was going to be, but betting small is the way to go. And like we have like straight draws and things. So we have like 10-9 that we can bluff with. We have queen 10, king 10. So we're just bluffing with like slightly stronger hands. Although we do bluff with queen 5 of clubs, which is okay. That's got a gut shot too, though. So yeah, so like we're just bluffing with like stronger hands. We have like too many draws to bluff with 6-5. So that's fair enough. So it's a good check. We get to the river. We river a pair of river of 5 of clubs. So it looks like you're going to smash this hand, I think. So first of all, he's probably going to have. There's going to be a bet percentage when we go check turn. So when he checks, he's got a lot of top pair. Oh, damn. I had no idea. So I don't think you torched it or anything, but yeah, this hand is a check. But like queen 5 is a bet. So that shows you how close it is. I mean, like, it's not like there's some huge EV difference between queen 5 and 6-5.
Which is
so
actually
it's close. Like your line of reasoning is like not like stupid, right? Like so.
Okay.
You're not trying to play like you can't like none of us can play like what the Sims output is. You're just trying to be like it's more an exercise of being approximately right rather than like definitely wrong. Do you know what I mean? So like like 6-5 wasn't a bet, but like queen 5 was a bet. It's like whatever. You didn't like overbet and like you bet 65%. It's bet 75. Like like you're right there. Like and this model doesn't even have bet 65%. It has 50 or 75, and you chose the one between those two. Like it's fine. You did a great job. I give you a fucking A+ for this hand.
Okay,
so this hand's like totally well.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
If I was watching this hand myself, I would not think that I misplayed it. I'd be like, okay, I played fine.
Yeah,
and just move on.
It felt fine.
All right, so we open. So thoughts here? Pure VPIP, mixed VPIP. What are we doing?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm not sure about this one, but I've been pure calling this just like kind of like tournament mode, just pure call pairs, just because the button has more flatting. So.
Well, I think when you have I think positional advantage matters. Like we're going to this range is more polar to some extent than these ranges because it does flat sometimes. But I think we're going to be folding against pretty much all of the positions. I'm not sure if we'd be folding. It's going to be sizing dependent against the blinds, I believe. And so here we go. So I thought it would mix. So the under pairs are pure calls. There are two reasons. Like when you look at this, it's like what's going on. There are two things going on. One, this is board coverage is a component of this. So because we don't open these hands very often, when we get 3-bet and we have these hands, we can call because we don't actually have them. So because we don't have them, when we actually spike them, we get paid better. Okay. So that's one part of it. The other part of it probably has to do with blocking effects to some extent. Like there might be some suited 7s and things in the 3-bet range where there aren't suited 4s in the 3-bet range. So so this hand mixes. So it's a decent 50% ish fold. So you shouldn't be pure calling here.
Okay.
That looks fine. I'm not going to solve it because I think that's pretty standard. Okay, I like to see this. This is reasonable. That's cool.
Yeah, that's probably
thoughts
too light.
Here.
Yeah, too light. I think that ace 10 mixes probably. Ace 10 off.
I would assume so. So ace 10 offsuit's the bottom of the range. It's a mix. Ace 9 offsuit's 0% weight. It's not a hand we should have. Get a cold forward. Good. That looks good. That looks good. That looks pretty good. Were you mentioned using randomizer earlier. Were you using randomizer at all for this situation?
Yes, I did. Also because no, I didn't. I actually, one of the things that I thought was concerning this hand was the fact that I unblock like Jack 9 and all the missed straight draws, but when he would have made a straight draw, he didn't bet. So I actually kind of sort of excluded those from his range a little bit. And then thought, then I just don't have a whole lot of misses. Then I almost am just unblocking his hits more than unblocking his missed straight draws.
I would have mixed this one personally in this situation. I would be mixed defending here. So here's your 1/3 bet that we never use. Comes in quite a bit here. It's not the only answer, but it does get used.
Fuck.
And then which one? So we have ace 8 of spades, and we even if we have diamonds, we'd still mostly call. So we think this hand's nowhere close to a fold. So we called, which was I thought like super standard. Turns a 10 of spades, and in position checks. So like this is obviously an important street. So like on this type of a card, we expect the in position range for checking to basically be capped. I mean, when we look at this board in game
Yeah.
and we're in this spot here, like this is a lot of draws, right? So like this guy's probably going to be barreling with most of the value. So like aces, kings, ace, queen, etc. Pretty high frequency bets, queen six, sixes, threes. So like once this goes check check, it's like this guy's capped. That's like immediately that's what we think. We're like, okay, this guy's got a weak range. Like that's great. So he's probably capped. He's got a lot of 10x. That's the other thing that we should be thinking. Like, okay, like this guy's gonna have a pair of tens a lot. But not a lot of really strong hands. So okay, so we check here. So now one of the things. So before I look at the solution, what that means is like, what do you think you're supposed to do on this river here with like 6-7 of diamonds?
Well, yeah, that's a good question because I'd probably bet for value.
I probably would have too, to be honest with you, but it's a mistake. We're supposed to check, so it's too far down. He has too many over pairs like jacks and nines and eights, I guess. So ace six is decent, but 6-7, I probably would have thinly value bet that myself, and it would have been a mistake. Okay, so we checked. So now I think maybe bluff catching the river as a mix is probably shit because now I have way more pairs of sixes than I thought.
Yeah.
When I was modeling it in my head, I was like, what would I do with 7-6 of diamonds? I'm like, I probably would have blocked. And that's a mistake. But if I don't have 7-6 of diamonds, ace eight's looking like a pretty damn good hand to mix defend.
Yeah.
Okay, so check. In position bet small. Ish, some half pot ish type sizing choice. And boom! Vindication. Even though I was like, it's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah. So it's okay. So it's like it's a mixed defend. I did actually want spades. I think these probably double barreling flush draws. So I kind of wanted spades. You can see like spades that have primacy over like hearts and clubs here. Spades have primacy over hearts and clubs here. So I did want spades. Spades have primacy over hearts and clubs here. Spades have primacy. So I mean, like that's cool. So like even though I was wrong about the pair of sixes, which we do actually have all of this support to defend with. Ace eight's like a pretty good way to do it, and as long as you have spades, so not the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think this is fine. So how are you thinking about sizing when you're playing the spot?
Well, maybe this is actually. I was thinking maybe this is actually one where I could go 33% just because. I mean, I shouldn't say that if he checks his board he's capped because I now know that there's a lot of checking in cash games. Knowing that, I think that a big bet is good here because if he checks back, okay. First of all, it's important to realize what the bottom of the button range is, right? Which is 8x offsuit. In that sense, I think it's pretty good to bet bigger because I want to deny some calls from that range. But I don't know if that is like a prevalent enough size of the range for me to even consider and adjust my bet sizing upon.
That's an important question, right? Like one of the things is like, where's my value coming from, and how's that value likely to behave?
I mean, I have a shitload of Jack X, 9x, so I feel like I can bet a lot here for value.
Okay, so I mean, I guess this is a viable sizing choice, I think. So we're not going to bet much 9x here. 9x is going to mostly be a check. But we are going to, which is again a little bit different from tournaments to some extent. It's a more polarized betting strategy, and that's because it's a less capped checking strategy, right? So like this guy's got more top pairs, for example, than you're maybe used to seeing at like 40 big blinds for sure. So because this player's range is a little bit stronger, like you're going to value bet a little bit higher up. So your range is mostly Jack X. This is a good sizing though. This is a viable sizing choice, and here's your strat. So here's king queen.
I'm surprised at how much we check 9x, to be honest.
Not a huge value betting component coming from 9x. Obviously, like no blocking, right? Like that's something that you might think. But I think that's going to have to do with the fact that like when you look at this actual in position range, it's just way stronger than you're used to. Like it's and I hadn't seen this at all. But you can see like this massive weighting on top pair still. Like this is a lot of top pair that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's not the case when you play tournaments. When you play tournaments, the guy checks back, like he doesn't have top pair anymore.
Yeah.
And so you end up blocking and like using all these bets like around like thinner parts of your range. But of course, like if we go back to the flop even here, we see 60% check. So but we're constantly in this like 50-50 sort of bet check world, right? And this like higher frequency check is like more uncapped than you're probably used to seeing. Here's pocket jacks. It does have a mixed weight check. Here's pocket nines. It is very close to pure betting, and like as a human, I would just pure bet it. But there's an allocation to the check option here. Here's pocket aces, which we're fairly used to seeing relative to kings and queens. But yeah, again, very substantial top pair weighting, which has an impact, I think, on how we want to bet. Also, like we've got a lot of money behind us, and so we're trying not to like overinvest to some extent, get two bet, and like build these huge pots with 9x at the same time that we're trying to build bigger pots with our betting range to try to get as much of the stack in as possible. So larger bets, more polarized, is kind of like a theme. So anyways, your bet was good though. King queen in your hand was like totally acceptable, and you take it, which is nice. Thoughts here?
Yeah, mix at a sliver, like 33%, I would say.
But if you're going to use a 2.5x from every position, this is 2.5x from every position. Here's king 9. This is at NL 500. So it's not a very high frequency open. Here is slightly different model. King 9 offsuit. Yeah. So like again, like the things are in relative agreement. Yeah, this hand's like I would mostly have folded. So
yeah.
I'm gonna skip over the spots where I think it's like autopilot, but
what about this one?
So
like
you call it 3-bet?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just like what about 30? I mean, I would still assume like even knowing everything we know about betting bigger now, this versus 3-betting range, I think that this would come up as an answer a lot. I mean, they mix some like lower suited connectors, everything at like what 20% weight or something. I believe to remember, it's like 6s 5, 6-5, 7-8, 6-7, that sort of shit. I do think we pure defend when we get 3-bets from button versus small blinds. So I do think I can bet this board relatively often, which means my bet sizing goes down. Maybe.
Okay, so everything that you're saying, I think, makes sense to me. So this is the small blind strat. Small blind has a linear 3-bet. We talked about that earlier in the session. So they're 3-betting suited 9 plus. Basically king queen plus at pure weights. King jack and king 10 are mixing. So like offsuit king highs, you could say offsuit king highs and suited 9s is like the backbone of this 3-bet strategy. So they don't have interaction on these low card boards. So that's an issue that they're going to have to deal with. One that we can, so that manifests itself with a 70% check. We can take advantage of that with a high frequency bet strategy where we mostly bet small. But we still have to check a lot. But yeah, again, you're seeing this 33% sizing choice. Primacy, like this is pretty high frequency action. And yeah, your hand basically pure bets. So nailed it. So again, we open this hand again.
I'll just pretend to say that I randomized it again, but
sure. So we check back the flop here. So what were you thinking when you checked this back? I think it's a good check, by the way, but I'm just curious what you're thinking.
Yeah. At this point, I just figured like I need some checks in my hand, and I kind of liked this hand for it. I like the capabilities it has for, beefing up my check back range a little bit. Has some potential over future streets. It's not necessarily a board I want to get 2-bet on. So yeah, I just figured that we're going to expand our checking strat a bit.
Yeah, so this is the in-position strat. Again, just 50-50 bet check. Just having that in your head is like real helpful for a lot of situations, right? Yeah. As opposed to just like shortcutting to bet range. As soon as you start doing that, like you're off to the races. Also, you see like this bet small strat, not as high frequency of an action here. Mostly betting half pot plus. So bet half pot plus or check. King 9, it's if you have a heart, it's probably going to be the way to do it. Because you can defend better versus the check raises. So if you have King 9 of diamonds, I'd expect that to fold, for example. So King 9, King of hearts is the way to bet, but we don't do it much. We mostly check. And King 9 of diamonds, it's a higher frequency bet than I thought, to be honest with you, but it still checks a lot. But we see the same kind of phenomena that take place that we see in tournaments. 8s and 7s, very staple components of the check strat. Jacks, higher frequency bet than aces. 6s, 9s, 10s, heavy allocations to bet, but also mixing to check. But again, so like one of the themes is just like stronger checking ranges than you're used to, right? So here's Jack 10, here's Queen 10, here's King 10, here's Ace 10. Like this, the fact that these have any check allocation at all is like kind of contra to turn
100%.
situations you're used to seeing. That's annoying. Yeah, I'd probably call it this variation. But I feel like this is pits. So check, check. Turns queen of diamonds. I don't think you made a mistake. Like I said, I would call, but I do think this is like kind of annoying. This is not pot. This is a smaller sizing choice than pot against a smaller sizing choice than pot. We're in there pure. But like the thing is, like, we do have to fold some pairs of nines with a gut shot, which is I knew was going to be the case. This is the better pair of nines with a better gut shot because we also have an overcard. So I knew that it was. I felt like it was going to be a call. But like 9-7 is a pair of nines with a gut shot also, and that variation has to fold. Mix to fold.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at. I was like, okay, I have to organize my pair of nines. That's right. Something like me and you do all the time. I have to organize my pair of nines and figure out where this one ranks, right? And so there's like, for me, there's a pause before I like move forward. So ace nine is, for example, your worst nine because it's the only one without a gut shot, which a lot of people like script like, oh, I have ace nine, like I have like top pair, I have second pair top kick or whatever. It's like, yeah, but all of your other nines have primacy over this one because they all have gut shots and you have a bluff catcher. So of course that extra equity is worth a lot. So this one pure folds. These pairs of nines are worth more. This is your worst gut shot pair of nines, so this one mixes to fold. This is against 75%. As we introduce overbet, we're between these two sizings. Obviously, we're aware of that. Between these sizing choices, king nine is actually mixing to fold now, but not with the king of hearts. 9-7's purely just been, EV's been trashed. 9-8's still in there, and this has a double gut shot, so that makes sense, right? We have a 7 and a jack to a straight, so that makes some sense.
Yeah.
And jack nine, same thing, double, open ender. So that one's pure in. So king nine is the best gut shot variation we have, but it still has to mix to fold against 125. So like against pot, like it's close-ish, but like calling's good. I don't think you made a mistake at all with king of hearts, especially. That's pretty interesting. So what are you thinking about in game?
Okay, so I made a mistake on stream. I said something like, it's bad that I have a heart, but it's actually really good that I have a heart because he's not supposed to bluff heart. So I kind of like unblock his king X, the king of clubs and that sort of shit.
Yep.
So I think it's a decent calling component. I'd rather have a hand like Jack 9 to block like Jack 8, King Jack. There's also because there's not a whole lot of like Jack X that he can just gets the barrel, right? Maybe like Jack 7 suited or something, but I don't know. I think it's reasonable to find this hand as a call, but I folded.
So
yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So I do have the solution up, but going into this, I felt like this hand like has redeemable qualities around calling, just because you block King Jack. Obviously, that's important. Your range is going to be dense bluff catchers because you check back the flop. You do have what was formerly top pair, but it's not. You don't have tons of it. You do have like a pair of queens sometimes for sure, but it's not like your opponent's range for overbetting is going to be 2 pair plus anyway. So having a pair of queens is not like it's how we block where the value is coming from, where the value is like straights. And 2 pair hands is like quite important. I think this hand in that regard is quite relevant. But we're both in a rush. So here's a solution: King 9, King of Hearts.
Wow, pure.
Is it does mix to fold with the 9 of clubs. So it's like
at
best if you were just like simplified, it's like a 55% call. If you were just like say the 9 kicker suit is you don't know what to do with it, you're probably gonna have something like 50 to 55% call King 9. So it's close to mix. Specifically you compared it to Jack 9. Jack 9 with the Jack of Hearts is pure call. So I mean Jack 9, Jack of Hearts is better combo to call with.
Yeah.
But somewhat comparably weighted overall. And yeah, you can see like Ace Queen, like which doesn't block any of the straights, is not pure calling. So like you don't block any. If the value is not coming from Queen X much, then having Ace Queen's not that helpful. It's a stronger hand, but it's not that helpful. It's the same. You can make the same argument about pocket aces, where like the problem is you don't really block where the value is coming from. You just have aces. Like it's a strong hand, but you don't block where the value is coming from. So I would have personally rather had like kings probably if I was playing this spot, but or jacks. You can see jacks is like a cool hand to have. Obviously, there's a lot of raise there. So okay.
Cool.
So like I said, we're both kind of got to run. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I am doing free sessions every week in the BBZ Discord. We can get you a link or something later, maybe. And then so that's like one of the main things that I'm doing that you guys might be interested in if you like this. Doesn't cost anything. BBZ Poker. We've got charts. We've got lots of bundles and different content strategies that you can use. But if you like the way that I think, BBZ Poker is where you can find us. So thanks, Lex. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, you're a legend, dude. Thank you very much.